Welcome back to LexTalks Legal Topics Simplified. Your guide to navigating the world of law. Today we're tackling a topic.
Okay.
It's not just a concept in your textbooks,
Right.
but a living, breathing part of the Indian legal system.
Interesting.
Protective discrimination.
And it's one that often sparks
Oh, yeah.
heated debates
Definitely.
and raises complex questions about equality, fairness, and social justice.
Exactly.
Big topics.
So for all you Indian law students out there,
Yeah.
think of this deep dive as your cheat sheet
I like it.
to understanding not just the what, but the why and the how of protective discrimination.
We'll break it all down.
We will.
We're going to break down its historical roots, unpack the legal framework, and dive into some of those fascinating real-world implications
Oh, for sure.
that might just pop up in your exams.
Let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What exactly is protective discrimination?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds a bit like a contradiction, doesn't it?
It does. And that's part of what makes it so intriguing.
I guess so.
Essentially, protective discrimination,
Yeah.
also known as affirmative action,
Right.
is about granting special privileges
Okay.
to historically disadvantaged sections of society.
Okay, so we're talking about groups that have faced
Yeah,
systemic discrimination and oppression for generations.
precisely.
Wow.
Think about the caste system in India,
Right.
which has created deep-rooted inequalities that persist to this day.
Still today.
Protective discrimination aims to level the playing field for these groups,
Okay.
giving them a leg up in areas like education, employment, and political representation.
So it's not about taking away opportunities from others,
Right.
but about ensuring that everyone has a fair shot.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that true equality sometimes requires
Yeah.
acknowledging the uneven playing field and taking steps to address those historical imbalances.
Now, I know India's constitution
Mm,
plays a huge role in all of this.
Absolutely. Articles 15 and 16. So your go-to provisions.
I remember those.
When it comes to protective discrimination,
Okay.
Article 15.4 specifically empowers the state to make special provisions
Yep.
for the advancement of what are termed socially and educationally backward classes,
Right.
like STs and OBCs.
And Article 16.4 goes a step further, focusing on reservations in government jobs, right?
You got it.
Yeah.
It's like the Constitution itself is saying,
Wow.
hey, we recognize that historical injustices need to be addressed,
Yeah.
and here's a framework for doing just that.
Okay, so how does this actually play out in real life?
Yeah.
What are
Yeah.
some concrete examples of how these reservations work?
Well, let's take educational institutions, for example.
Okay.
Let's say you have 100 seats in a prestigious engineering college.
Okay, 100 seats.
A certain percentage of those seats, as per the reservation policy, would be set aside for students from SC, ST, and OBC communities.
So even if a student from a general category
Right.
has a slightly higher score, a student from a reserved category might get that seat.
That's the idea.
Well.
It's about ensuring representation and access for those who have historically been excluded from these spaces.
Makes sense.
And it's not just about college admissions.
No.
Think about government jobs promotions, even representation in parliament.
I'm starting to see how this is woven into so many aspects of Indian society.
Right.
But doesn't the system
Yeah.
create its own set of challenges?
Sure.
I mean, there's always that debate about meritocracy.
Ah, yes, the age-old debate.
Yeah,
Does prioritizing social justice compromise merit?
interesting.
It's a question that has been discussed and dissected in countless courtrooms and classrooms.
And I'm guessing there's no easy answer.
Not really.
Right.
But what we can do is explore the different sides of this debate, understand the arguments,
Yeah.
and perhaps even start to formulate our own informed opinions.
Sounds like we have a lot more ground to cover.
We do.
Okay. So let's dive into this meritocracy debate. What are some of the key arguments against protective discrimination?
Well, one of the most common criticisms is that it can lead to
Yeah.
less qualified individuals getting positions or opportunities
Right.
simply because of their caste or social background.
I see.
Critics argue that this undermines the principle of rewarding talent and hard work.
They're basically saying it creates a system where people are appointed or admitted
Yeah.
not because they are the best, but because of a quota system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some even argue that this can lead to inefficiency and a decline
Oh, wow.
in the overall quality of institutions or services.
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
But what about the arguments in favor of reservations?
Okay.
What do proponents of protective discrimination say?
Well, their main point is that
Yeah.
Traditional measures of merit don't take into account the historical and systemic disadvantages
Right.
faced by certain groups.
Okay.
They argue that a student from a marginalized community who scores, say, 60% might have had to overcome far greater obstacles than a student from a privileged background who scores 70%.
So it's not just about comparing raw scores,
No.
but understanding the context in which those scores were achieved.
Exactly. And proponents of protective discrimination argue that if you don't acknowledge these systemic disadvantages, you're essentially perpetuating inequality under the guise of meritocracy.
It's like saying the playing field might look level.
Right.
But it's actually tilted in favor of those who have always had the advantage.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's why they believe that protective discrimination is necessary to level the playing field and create a truly fair and just society.
This is making me think about all those landmark cases.
Oh, yeah.
We studied in constitutional law.
Absolutely.
I bet they had a field day with this issue.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The courts have played a crucial role in shaping how protective discrimination is implemented in India. One of the most significant cases is Indira Sawhney v. Union of India.
Yeah, Indira Sawhney.
That's the one that established the 50% ceiling for reservations.
Right, that rings a bell.
Right.
So why 50%? What was the logic behind setting that limit?
Well, the court was trying to strike a balance.
Okay.
They recognized the need to address historical injustices,
Right.
but also wanted to ensure that the system didn't swing too far in the other direction and completely disregard merit.
Yeah.
The 50% cap was seen as a way to safeguard against excessive reservations.
It sounds like they were walking a tightrope.
Yeah.
Trying to reconcile two competing principles.
That's the essence of judicial review in many ways, isn't it?
Yeah.
Trying to find that sweet spot where competing interests and principles can coexist.
Makes sense. Were there any other major cases
Oh, yeah.
that shaped the landscape of protective discrimination?
Oh, there are quite a few.
Really?
Nagaraj v. Union of India further clarified the conditions for applying reservations.
Nagaraj.
It basically said that the state needs to demonstrate both backwardness of the class and inadequate representation in services.
So it's not enough to just say a particular community is socially and educationally backward. You need to show that they are also underrepresented in government jobs.
Right. Interesting.
The court wanted to make sure that reservations were being used judiciously and not just as a blanket solution.
It seems like the courts are constantly trying to fine-tune this system.
They are.
Making sure it doesn't veer too far in any one direction. But what about the future of protective discrimination?
Good question.
Where do we go from here? It's fascinating to see how much thought and debate has gone into shaping this system. But where do we go from here?
Right.
Is protective discrimination a permanent fixture, or will it evolve?
That's the million-dollar question.
I bet it is.
The sources we've looked at point to a few possible directions.
Okay.
Some experts argue that reservations might need to adapt. Okay, how so?
As India's economy changes.
You mean with the rise of the private sector?
Exactly. No. The current system focuses mainly on government jobs and institutions.
Right.
But what about representation?
Yeah, where else?
In the booming private sector.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Should there be reservations in private companies too?
It's a contentious issue for sure.
I bet.
Some argue that true equality can only be achieved if opportunities are open across all sectors.
Makes sense.
Others worry about potential economic implications.
Oh, right.
And the role of government intervention in private businesses.
It sounds like a complex balancing act yet again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just about where reservations are applied, but also how some advocate for a shift towards a more skills-based approach, focusing on empowering individuals with education and training rather than just reserving seats.
So moving beyond just access to opportunities and towards actually equipping people to thrive in those opportunities.
Exactly.
Wow.
Imagine a scenario where the focus shifts to providing high-quality education and skill development programs, specifically targeted at historically disadvantaged communities.
That would allow individuals to compete on a more level playing field regardless of their background.
Precisely.
Wow.
It might even make reservations less necessary over time.
Interesting.
But that's a long-term goal.
Yeah, I see.
Right now, the debate is very much alive.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
It has.
For our listeners who are Indian law students, what's the key takeaway here?
I think the biggest takeaway is that protective discrimination is a dynamic and evolving concept.
Okay.
It's not just about memorizing articles and case names.
Right.
It's about understanding the historical context, grappling with the ethical dilemmas, and engaging with the ongoing debates.
It's about seeing the law not just as a set of rules, but as a tool for social change.
And as future legal professionals, you have a crucial role to play in shaping how this tool is used to create a more just and equitable society.
That's a powerful message to end on.
Yeah.
So to all our listeners out there, keep those legal minds sharp. Stay curious.
Keep learning.
And remember that the pursuit of justice is an ongoing journey.
And who knows, maybe some of you will be the ones arguing these very cases in court someday.
Thank you for listening to LexTalks. Follow, subscribe, and stay notified for future episodes.